This is Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limerick Chiropractic Center, and I want to welcome you to our conversation tonight on should you be gluten-free. Now, I want you to hold on to your hats because in the next 15 minutes we're going to answer this question so that everybody knows exactly what you need to be doing. Now, all joking aside, no, it's not going to take 15 minutes to answer this question. You know, there is so much information, so many volumes have been written about this, that there's a lot of background. There's a lot of things that are probably new for most of you out there that you just didn't know about this product. And in turn, you know, you're probably like most of my patients that ask me, you know, two very simple questions. Number one, listen, my grandparents ate, you know, bread 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh yeah, by the way, they normally had some other gluten product called pasta at least 2-3 times a week. So how could they eat this stuff and live their life and thrive, and I can't even consume it? When I come in contact with it, I got all types of bad stuff. Should I really be gluten-free? Now, the other question that I was asked today, what's in it for me? Why should I bother paying attention? Why should I bother even trying? Well, you know what? I'm hoping that by the end of this workshop, we're going to answer some of those questions for you guys. We're going to answer the question of, you know, the why. We're going to answer the questions of, you know, why is it, you know, it used to be okay and now it's not really a better choice for many people. But I'll tell you what, I don't want you getting wrapped up in trying to take notes and trying to make sure you write down every little thing. I really want you to sit back and for the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just listen to the conversation. In the comments section, what I ask you to do is very simple. Not only do I want you to ask for the signs and signals of being gluten intolerant, whether this is a problem for you or not, and whether you should be concerned, but also I want you to tag somebody. I want you to make sure that this time is not just about you, it's about how you get to help somebody else out with this information. Listen, regardless of whether you have this problem or not, you need to know. And I'll tell you, probably by the end of this conversation, you're going to figure out there are more people out there that you know that need to know what you just learned than you realize. So let's step into this conversation of should you be gluten-free? Is it a fact or is it a fad? But sorry about that. Let's start from the beginning instead of the end. See, I started with the end in mind. So first things first, what is gluten? Well, you know, it's part of the wheat. It's part of this thing that we've all sung about, the amber waves of grain. Well, gluten happens to be part of that wheat. Now, wheat goes into a lot of different products. And you know, we could talk about, you know, how it's the pulp that's inside that kernel and, you know, and how things like this have been changed as far as the harvesting and the production. So we'll talk about that a little bit. You know, we'll talk about the fact that, yeah, they use GMO seeds now. So, you know, if you're not familiar with genetically modified products, that means that they've been altered in a laboratory in order to make them, you know, more pest resistant, to be able to withstand, you know, less amount of water, to be able to tolerate higher heats. They've also have been taken through a different process in order to actually be able to be brought into and be harvested. So we'll talk, all right? But I guess one of the better questions to ask first is, what actually contains gluten? Well, listen, anything that wheat is made out of. Now the sad thing is that when you look at this list, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't even think about. No offense, but I'm pretty sure that beer is not on most people's mind when they talk about gluten. Everybody shake their head up and down. Yes, the grains, the wheats, trust me, it is all in there. It is gluten filled, it is gluten packed, all right? Things that are up here that, you know, sometimes you don't even think about, lunch meats. Boy, it's a meat product. What are you talking about? Well, it's a processed food, which means that they use fillers. And gluten happens to be one of those fillers. I love the fact that, people, as they're consuming these sports drinks, well, it's a drink. It doesn't have, the answer is yes. If you have never taken a workshop on reading labels, let me encourage you. You need to learn how to read labels. In the end, knowledge is power. In the end, having the awareness of what's in the foods that you're putting into your body is so important because, I was telling a friend this past weekend, you are what you eat. Everything that you put into your mouth, everything that goes over your lips and down your throat, guess what happens? It becomes part of what you happen to be. Every cell wall in that body of yours, every tissue happens to be composed of the foods and the nutrients that you stick into it. Therefore, we have choices. The good, the bad, and the absolutely ugly stuff that goes into our body. But you are what you eat. If you choose to eat through the drive-thru at McDonald's, well, let me tell you, you're no better than grade D beef. That's all it is. Is organic better? The answer is yes. But there is a lot of choices in between those two things. Listen, this might be something that you decide that by the end of the workshop, not only do I want, the list of the sensitivities, so make sure that you write your name down, make sure that you tag somebody else in this, but you might decide that, hey, listen, I need to start making better choices in order to help myself. What's in it for me? Well, let me tell you, that is a big question. Now, here are some of the foods that are gluten-free. And quite simply, listen, there are those things, the fresh meats, fish, poultry, not breaded, okay? We're not talking about, chicken cutlets. We're not talking about chicken parm, all right? Most dairy products happen to be gluten-free. I don't recommend dairy products, but they are gluten-free, all right? And as we look here, the gluten-free flours, oftentimes this is a concern. Oh my goodness, how do I bake in the kitchen? How am I able to make my Thanksgiving treats if I don't have the opportunity of using flour? Listen, there are a lot of alternatives out there. We're blessed because we've used those things. We know that, Bob's Red Mill, 1-to-1 flours. It's great, it's simple, it's easy, it's not that hard. In turn, there are options out there. And the only reason why I put this up here is so that you know that, there is still a broad base of foods to pick and choose from that give you the opportunity of consuming things and enjoying life. This is not a death sentence. This is an anchor that we get to let go of in order to make sure that our body is able to thrive. In fact, when we start talking about, okay, so if there's a product or if there's a problem with this product, and I have a problem with it, what are those grades? What are those levels of problem? Well, listen, there's a couple different levels. There are food allergies, which oftentimes we'll see that, they actually demonstrate themselves in a lot of ways that are, very simply monitored. You do a blood test. You see the proteins in the blood. You get to be witness to how your body responds by producing what's called an immunoglobulin response. Now, sometimes we don't see the protein, but we see all the other symptoms. And that's why we call that a sensitivity reaction. Now, there are also intolerances, and there's subtle differences between food intolerances and food sensitivities. But here's the thing. Either of those really boil down to the same, or any of these boil down to the same fact. They're all indicators that they don't raise the vibration of your body. They don't lift it up and produce a system that's healthier and thriving even more. So in the end, it becomes that demonstration of we are better to push away, to not consume, and to make better choices. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to skip through some of this information because I'm going to tell you that there's a part of this that we really need to cover that I want to make sure that we don't overload you with. but it's the fact of how is it that this product that used to be so wholesome has now become such an issue. And here's the thing. Anytime man gets involved in nature, and man believes that he knows more than his creator, more than that universal intelligence, unfortunately problems will arise. You know, there's a small little product. It's called propylene glyphosate. All right? It's a big word. Let me boil it down for you real simple. Glyphosates happen to be motor oil. It's a form of motor oil. Now, you're saying, why is it so important that we're talking about motor oil here? Okay. So let's go back to our conversation when we first got started, those amber waves of grain. Well, at one time, you know, it was the smaller farmers. They harvested wheat. They waited until the wheat actually dried in the fields, and then they went out and they harvested that wheat product. You know, you think about the old sickle that they used to use. Okay, well, nobody's using that old sickle. Nobody's walking around with one of those things going like this. You have those huge combines that are out in the field, you know, 10, 100,000 acres, and they are just hammering through these fields in order to harvest them. Well, in the modern day, it's not enough that we have all types of issues. We have to plan to make sure that that amber, those waves of grain are all ready to be harvested on a schedule. Now, normally, nature does things in its own time. Nature has its own schedule. Well, that's not good enough for man. We need to control when it is that we're able to harvest the stuff. And if it's not dried out, then guess what? It doesn't harvest well. It doesn't fit the mold of what the manufacturer is capable of using. So therefore, they spray with this petroleum product, spray with this chemical, and it does a wonderful job of drying those kernels out so that they're capable of being harvested on time. Now here's the sad thing. Remember, you are what you eat. You are what you eat. In fact, that stuff that's sprayed on this gluten, that's sprayed on the wheat, gets into that pulp. Which means, unfortunately, you get to be eating that motor oil. No offense, you and I don't look like a VW Rabbit. You and I don't look like a Mercedes or a Ferrari. I don't care what you want to pick. Our bodies were never designed to have those chemicals put inside of it and for it to run smoothly. Buyer beware. Because in the end, when we start asking ourselves, should we be gluten-free? 9 times out of 10, the answer is absolutely yes. The answer is absolutely yes, from the fact that because most of us aren't making the better choice of picking that organic flour, or those flours that we have known to be certified have not been exposed to either GMO material or that have not been exposed to that glyphosate, well, unfortunately, we're accepting into our body that material. And that material, your body reacts to. That material, your body creates inflammation. Now, I'm going to ask what's in it for you. See, some of you want to get out of the pain that you're in. Anybody out there, you want to raise your hand? I do. That's why I went gluten-free. I had bursitis like crazy. I had bursitis and tendonitis, and my hip was killing me, and, you know, I wasn't able to run or cycle. In turn, you know, it was one of the things that I had to push off to the side in order to help to reduce the inflammation in my body, to stop the pain and allow my body to heal the way it's supposed to. See, many of you, as you think about gluten, you just simply think about, well, this is what happens to my stomach. This is what happens to my intestines. But unfortunately, there's so many other signs and signals of, of gluten intolerance or being, gluten sensitive, not even allergies. I mean, there's a whole class of, celiac, which is 1% of our population that, many of us, it's a rare few that are actually, suffer from celiac disease that can't come in contact with gluten at all. That's not the type of person that we're talking about. We're talking about that person who's got the intolerance, who has the sensitivity, and it shows up of, things like brain fog and headaches. It shows up from the standpoint that they get stomach bloating, after they consume meals, or, maybe they show up and they demonstrate a skin rash or constant pain in an area, where, this inflammation just doesn't go down. Listen, I don't know which one of those signs or which one of those signals your body demonstrates. But what I do know is this. Does our body function better without those things? The answer is yes. If you come in and you ask me, should I be gluten-free? 9 times out of 10, I am going to say absolutely yes. Because it's one of those things that I know in the end, as you get a copy of this, these 10 different signs, these signals that demonstrate that you're gluten, sensitive or intolerant. Many of you hit the check boxes. Not just 1 or 2 of these things, but multiple of these different indicators. These different red lights that say stop. Not yellow lights. Not yellow lights that say slow down, but red lights that actually say stop doing what you're doing. And here's a huge thing. If we don't listen to when our body talks to us, it will scream at us. And I'm a living example. Because let me tell you, what I had to do was really simple. I had to stop. I had to stop eating gluten. I had to cut out dairy. I also had to stop running. I also had to stop riding my bike in order to overcome what problems I had created for myself. So oftentimes when patients ask, well, why should I do this? Because I don't want you making the same mistake I made. I don't want you to have to go through the heartache that I went through. Through the fact that, I had to push away from doing things that I absolutely loved doing. I don't want you to have to do that. But what I do recognize you have to do is you have to make a different choice. You have to choose not to wait until you're in crisis. You have to choose to actually make a different decision before you get to the point where your body is screaming at you and it's going to make you stop one way or the other. Here's the deal. I'd love for you to ask me that question. I would encourage you to ask me, why should I stop? Why should I not consume this product? Because listen, as you're getting this answer, it's the same answer that you're probably going to tell your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones, in order to make sure that they at least know and become aware of what you know now. Because in the end, listen, those last few minutes, this was not about just you and I. I love this information. I love sharing this information. But I recognize if it's just held amongst us few, then shame on us. Because there are our tribes and our friends out there that they need to know what we know to help save them from ever becoming one of those statistics that, let me think, gets put on some medication for the rest of their life that has to deal with, unnecessary surgeries. We don't have to be party to that. But that requires us to do what we're supposed to do. Number 1, we're supposed to be liking this video. Number 2, I want to make sure that you get the list of those 10 things. So make sure that, and we'll email them out to you. Number 3 is to share. Share this information in your Facebook group. If you want to, you know somebody, you need to tag them to make sure that they're getting the information. But you need to do your part to make sure that we never have to live with that word regret. I know this was the very short version about being gluten-free. I look forward to breaking this down more, but let me tell you, there is an awful lot of information. We scratched the surface. I'm going to encourage you to learn, to research, to educate yourself, to make those better decisions. I'm Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limerick Chiropractic Center.